Hello, everyone. Welcome to our last round of breakout sessions. My name is April Scott, and I'll be your moderator. Before we get started, I have a few quick announcements. First, I want to take a minute to thank our premier sponsors, Oshner Baptist, Jamie Boyd, Jacqueline Landry, The Advocate, and Fidelity Power. Also, a reminder that our Text to Give campaign is running all day today. Please raise money for period supplies to help deliver products to women and girls in need. This is your last chance to purchase raffle tickets for the chance to win a 7-night stay at the Grand Mayan Resort in Riviera Maya, Mexico, courtesy of Jamie Boyd and Jacqueline Landry. You can visit our JLNO website with /WLS to purchase your tickets before 3 p.m. today. Let's get started with our session, prioritizing yourself, how to take care of your whole self. Our speakers today are Dr. Tammy Wilborn, owner and chief clinical officer at the Wilborn Clinical Services, LLC, Molly Kimball, registered dietitian, nutrition journalist, and founder of Oshner Eats Fit, Stephanie Osborne, CEO of Meditate New Orleans, and Layla Marcos Zissis, founder of Like Minded Ladies and owner and founder of Exquisite Life Revealed Coaching. I'll ask each speaker to start off by giving us a brief overview of their background and organization. Then I'll have some questions to get us going. In the meantime, if you have any questions, please use our chat feature, and there we'll get your questions in the order that they're received. All of the lines have been muted to minimize disruption and background noises. We'll start with Dr. Wilborn to introduce herself.
Well, thank you so much, April, for the introduction, and thank you so much, Junior League of New Orleans, for the invitation. It's an honor to be here, and I appreciate it so much. And also thank you to the sponsors. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Tammy Lewis Wilborn, and I am the owner and chief clinical officer of Wilborn Clinical Services. Wilborn Clinical Services is a mental health practice based here in the city, and there's actually 4 key services that the practice offers. So mental health counseling, clinical supervision for pre-licensed master's level counselors. We also host a number of continuing education workshops and trainings. And then there's also a consultation component for the practice. And then in terms of just who I am outside of that, or as really as a part of that rather, is I am a board certified licensed professional counselor supervisor. And honored to be here. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Wilborn. How about you, Layla? Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sorry about that. My name is Layla Marcos Zissis, and I am the founder and president of Like Minded Ladies. We started back in 2015, and we have grown to more than 200 members from New Orleans to the Gulf Coast. And we have hopes on expanding nationwide. Of course, COVID has put a little bit of a damper on that. We are a 501c6 organization that supports women both personally and professionally. And I'm also the founder of Layla Marcos Zissis LLC, Exquisite Life Revealed Coaching. I am a national board certified health and wellness coach, and I am also an ICF certified coach. So I work primarily with women, but I do work with all populations and finding whole balance in their life, cura personalis, the whole body, the whole person, to remove obstacles in the way and help them achieve their goals and success. I also have a long history in communications. I was a television news anchor and reporter, former senior account executive in public relations, and also sales and media marketing executive. And I am very happy to be here and very honored to be part of this panel and be asked to participate today. What an honor.
Thank you, Layla. Let's turn it over to Molly. Molly, can you give us some information about yourself?
Yes, for sure. Before I get started about myself, I also want to say Layla, my first experience with her was, her group, Like-Minded Ladies, is about women supporting women. It's women empowering women. The very first encounter I had with Layla, I'll just share this very quickly. It was at WGNO. I'm a registered dietitian, but I had done a TV package, a segment that was going to needed to be edited and had a whole lot of stuff that needed to happen post-production. So I had gone out as a nutritionist, done the part I knew. I'd talk nutrition. And then the person I was working with said, see ya, figure out how to edit it. I'm in the editing room. I thought, I have no idea. In walks Layla. I didn't know her. And she said, let me help you. She spent hours going through it with me. She taught me that. She led me through it. And she truly helped me pull it together. So when she says this is, or she hasn't said it, she's not going to say it about herself, but this is her passion. She lives it. I experienced it firsthand, and that was my first encounter with her. So anyway, it's an honor to be here with all of our panelists. Y'all are an incredible group of women, and I'm excited to be included in this. So I'm a registered dietitian. I am based out of Ochsner Fitness Center. Some of y'all may know it as Elmwood Fitness Center. A couple of years ago, we rebranded to Ochsner Fitness Center. I've been a registered dietitian there for 21 years. I started our nutrition program, and we have registered dietitians on site at the fitness center who do one-on-one family nutrition, food sensitivities, weight loss, energy, all the things that you would expect. That they work very closely with these one-on-one sessions that we've built and grown this nutrition program out of Ochsner Fitness Center. In addition, we started Eat Fit out of the fitness center, and y'all might know of Eat Fit NOLA. And it's a nonprofit, and we work with local restaurants, food service, markets, corner stores, wherever we can get in, the Superdome, the airport during normal times. And where can we guide people where the nutritious options are? It's free. We don't charge partners to be an Eat Fit partner. It's part of what we want to do in the community to help guide, to help to make that healthy choice the easy choice. And we've now expanded Eat Fit into 6 regions across the state, which is really cool. And then separately from that, those are kind of the main things under the Ochsner Hub. I do a weekly podcast called Fueled Wellness and Nutrition, which really kind of dives into really deeper topics where we get to spend, 45 minutes to an hour each week, just really drilling into some of the things that are hot topics that we're all talking about.
Great. Thank you so much, Molly. Stephanie, we're going to turn it over to you.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm grateful to be here with you ladies. So I'm the CEO of Meditate New Orleans. We offer mindfulness, compassion, and gratitude curriculums to high school students with PTSD and depression. We also offer mindfulness leadership retreats for workshops for corporate events, as well as public meditation sessions. And I host an annual Reclaiming the Goddess Within Women's Empowerment and Mindfulness Weekend. So.
Well, thank you so much for all of your intros. We're going to start talking about how do we take care of our whole self. So I have a few questions, and first up for those questions, I have this one for you, Stephanie and Molly. What led you to a career focused on improving one's mental, physical, or spiritual health? We can start with you, Stephanie.
Okay, thank you for that question. I started studying meditation when I was a student at at NOCA, New Orleans Center for Creative Arts, in the theater department. And there's 4 segments to theater. One was business, another like technical design, one was drama, one was voice, and one was movement. And in the movement, we'd start the class with yoga, the Chairman Mile, which is a Chinese exercise, and meditation. And it was so good for me that when I went to college, I took yoga and meditation as a physical education requirement. And then I started being a crisis meditator. So I would meditate when I was stressed out, but that was pretty much it. And then when I was about 30 years old, I'm 44 now. When I was about 30, I started having heart palpitations and vertigo, and I didn't know what was going on. So the doctors didn't really ask me. And so they put me on heart medication and vertigo medication. And I didn't realize that it was actually, I was having panic attacks. And so, but I was on all this medication trying to fix the symptoms and not really realizing what the deeper issue was. And so one day when I was about to have a panic attack, and I didn't know it, I was just like, oh, I'm so dizzy and my heart's beating. And my husband said, well, what are you thinking right now? And I realized that it was my thoughts that was creating the anxiety. And so I started back with my meditation so that I could figure out what were the thoughts that was triggering the anxiety attacks. And so when the anxiety attacks went away, because I started bringing myself back, I stopped meditating for a while, and then I got ulcerative colitis. I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, which is an autoimmune disease. And the symptoms are triggered by the foods you eat and stress. And so the more I would meditate, the less of the symptoms I'd have because I was working on my diet. So then I just decided I needed to stick to it. And it was so good for me that um, I've been supporting my husband's career for 25 years. And when I turned 39, I decided I needed to do something to kind of step into my autonomy and create a legacy for myself separate from my husband. Not that that wasn't great, but something for me. And my husband said, what could you do all day? And I said, I could guide meditation and I could meditate. So that's what I started doing. I was already doing it on a personal, private level with my friends and family, but then I started doing it on a corporate level and studying under Deepak Chopra and mindfulness-based stress reduction. And so that's what I've been doing.
Wow, that's an amazing story. Molly, give us some information about what led you to your career focus in this area.
Yeah,
And then
so
we just heard a little bit about how diet changes things. So I can't wait to hear what you have to say.
absolutely, absolutely. So growing up, I grew up primarily with my dad, who was kind of the main parent. And he was always, he jogged back in the 70s, like when no one was jogging, and like they didn't even have like regular, like what we think of now as like regular running shoes. And he just always was very progressive and very health minded. And back then it wasn't always the things that we know now are the most nutritious for ourselves. There was a lot of things that maybe we thought were better than, like margarine and things like that, but he at least tried. And he was real, he tried to stay up on like the latest wellness science basically and incorporate that into our household. And movement was always part of our lifestyle. Nutrition was always part of our lifestyle. And when I went to college, I didn't even know that being a registered dietitian was a profession. So I went in to major in pre-med, and while I liked it, I felt like, and I did well in it, but it wasn't something that I felt like. I looked around me and I thought, I'm not so driven for this like the other people are around me. This isn't just what's in my core. And then I met someone who actually was a registered dietitian. I'm like, wow, this can be a profession. And it just like clicked, because that was always what my leisure reading was, what I wanted to know more about. And that's what I did in my downtime. And it was something that was just such a passion for me. So being able to do that, went to school, became a registered dietitian. I was really fortunate that as I was finishing my dietetic internship back in '99, the fitness center was looking to bring on a registered dietitian to start the nutrition program. And this is one of those things where I had two job offers. I had a steady job offer at as a pediatric dietitian in one of the local hospitals, or I could start this program from scratch. And so I had nothing to lose. And so I say this to share this with the women listening too, because it was one of those risks. I could have gone the sure thing that I knew I would have had a job for the rest of my life doing that and a steady paycheck. But I didn't, this was definitely a risk, but I thought, why not? What do I have to lose? I'm not leaving a steady career for this. So I took the leap. I tried it. I built up the program. And as I said, we now have 2 full-time dietitians, and we have Eat Fit in 6 spaces across the state. So I'm really glad that I took that chance and did it. And the other things, the communications, we do the weekly TV segments and podcasts. Those aren't things that are in my nature. I know others that is kind of that is part of their calling, and they don't mind being in that center of it, but that's actually not my nature. I much prefer to be in the background. But it's kind of a necessary evil. We've got this information, we want to share it with the public. So I've also just really made myself take those steps out to do those other media and communications as well, to help with the nutrition education in our community.
Thank you, Molly. Layla, I have one for you. So this year's been a really tough year for all of us. I don't know anybody yet that has said this has been a great year for them. With the struggles that we have, how have you found personally to keep yourself motivated and to stay on path?
Well, first, let me just say, Molly, you do an incredible job. And thank you for your kind words earlier. I appreciate you. And I'm very proud of you. You've really done a fantastic job. So, I thought about this question quite a bit. What are some of the things that, I have struggled with? What are the things that have kept me motivated through COVID-19? We're in month 9 now. I remember when the pinpoint date was back in July and June, like, oh, we're going to see what happens, June this, and then July this. And then it's like we kept on, the dates kept on getting pushed back further and further and further and further. One of the things that I realized through this, with staying on track with things, is one, getting an accountability partner. And actually, I have 2 accountability partners. One is one of my best friends, and she's more of my accountability partner with exercising and working out. I know myself, and I know I do better when I am with someone else who is on the same path and wants to do the same things. And it so happens that she's a personal trainer. And then my other accountability partner is in the UK. She's in London, and she's my business accountability partner. And we help each other stay on track with building our businesses, building our online courses, and doing things like that. So one of the things is definitely knowing yourself and knowing what you need. So an accountability partner, like I said, was crucially important to me to keep going, because we are all, I don't want to use the word struggling, but it's different now, right? Like we've lived our entire lives a certain way. And then this is something that we have never expected to come into our lives. So we are all having to do things differently now. And so just being compassionate with oneself and being able to shift and expect the unexpected, and shifting that mindset and being okay with that. But I will say that somebody said it was the great COVID equalizer. That wine is the one thing that I have definitely had a little bit too much of, right? So again, it's developing that accountability partner, right? Like, you're not alone in that. Yes, we are all struggling, and having compassion and realizing like we're all going through things. So when you have somebody with you, when you have compassion with yourself, you can shift your mindset to focus on not I'm struggling, I'm stressed out. It's just, how are we doing things different, right? Like, reframe things. You can definitely have more of a positive attitude. And if you drink too much wine that night, then that's okay. Don't beat yourself up the next morning, right?
Thank you, Layla. That absolutely hit home for me. Funny story is I was just like that. And in the middle of this, I had too many glasses of wine, and I had symptoms that I thought was COVID that was actually hangovers. Every morning for about a week, I had my temperature taken, everything, and my husband was like, "You're drinking a lot of wine. Maybe it's that." So I stopped drinking the wine, and I have no more COVID-like symptoms. So thank you for that. Accountability partners are really cool and great. So next question is, women are notorious for taking care of everyone else but ourselves. What's one thing you recommend we prioritize in order to take care of our whole selves, Dr. Wilborn?
Yeah, it's such an important question, right? And I think it's important for a couple of reasons. And I think we've already kind of hit on one of them. We're living in a time where there's a lot of things that are not in our control, right? We're in the midst of a global pandemic. It's an election year. There's social and civil unrest. There's a lot of fake news and lies and distortions that are sort of part of our social landscape. And then I think also, as women, we're socialized and expected to, like you said, be everything for everyone. And I think oftentimes because of that, we can often experience this sense of being out of control, right? And so I want to make this segue, because I think the one key thing that is important for us as women to try to focus on and prioritize is control the controllable, right? control the controllable, because when we're able to focus on the things that we can control, we minimize that sense of being out of control. We minimize the sense of, despair, dysfunction, that sense of worry and fear that I think a lot of us are experiencing right now. And there's a number of things that we can control. And I want to just kind of highlight three. And so the first thing I think that's important in terms of control is that you can control your self-care. You can control taking care of your basic health. And I'm not talking about like the self-care, we're talking about vacations and all the, all the frou-frou things that we tend to think about. I'm talking about the basics of taking care of your mental and physical health. And I want to really kind of punctuate self-care in this particular way, because I feel like we're in this moment of movements where self-care is a movement and wellness is a movement. And the thing that's really important, I think, for all of us to think about, but particularly women, is that self-care is not a movement, right? Self-care is a lifestyle. Self-care is the choices that you make every day to live optimally. And I think in terms of when we're thinking about self-care, the other thing that I think is important for us to recognize before I get into the other piece of this is that self-care is also not radical. It's not revolutionary. Maybe it was in the 60s, maybe it was in the 20s, but self-care is basic, right? You getting 6 to 8 hours of sleep is not radical, is what your body needs. You eating food that's good for you and not just good to you, that's not radical. That's what your body needs, right? And so I think recognizing that that what you can control is your self-care, and that self-care leads to you being able to live optimally is important. The second thing I want to say real quick is you can control setting boundaries with folks. As women, again, we're not socialized to set boundaries with people, right? We're expected to just allow people to make decisions for our lives and, be available to everyone at all times. But I want us to think about boundaries in this particular way. Boundaries are like keys to your home. Not everyone has access to your house. And so is also true that not everyone should have access to you physically, mentally, and emotionally. So setting a boundary is something that you can actually control and should, because it promotes well-being, it promotes purpose, and all the things that we know lead to lives that are satisfactory and authentic. And the last thing I'll say really quick, and Stephanie talked about this earlier, you can control what you think. We don't think that, but we can. Oftentimes, the things that cause us to be unwell are that we have thoughts that are inaccurate, unhelpful, and unhealthy. And so when we're able to take a step back and look at, is the thing that I'm thinking true? Is it helpful for me to think the thing that I'm thinking? And is it healthy? In other words, does it help me to feel better? And if your answer to that question is no, you can change that thought to a thought that is actually more true, more helpful, and healthy. So control the controllables. That would be the thing I'd say in those three kind of specific ways. There's others, but those are three ways.
Those are great, and I'm taking notes over here, that's for sure. Boundaries, big deal, big key, especially as women. Creating those spaces and times of boundaries I found to be key to my own personal happiness, with just saying, hey, this time I'm not accepting any phone calls. I'm spending this time with my daughters, no excuses. And people begin to respect that. And then they begin to take heed from what you are doing and feel empowered to create those boundaries themselves. So I really like that note. Stephanie, I would like to hear a little bit more from you. Dr. Wilborn mentioned you and taking control of your mind and your thoughts. So what are you thinking about? What's one thing that you recommend for us to take care of our whole self?
Quiet time. So a lot of, and when I say quiet time, what I mean is time away from people, and time away from social media, and and TV. So we're constantly bombarded with information from people's perspectives on social media, as well as our friends, and that's fine. I mean, we hang out with people who are tend to be like-minded, so we want to hear their perspectives. But a lot of times we have to take time for ourselves so that we can just kind of settle in and figure out what we think. And sometimes we don't do that if we're so busy listening to what everybody else is saying and what we're reading, and what's kind of the algorithms are coming on, Facebook and Instagram. So they're kind of feeding us what we already believe, and it's like times 30,000, So taking quiet time is really good. And the way I started doing that was in 2006 when I was introduced to The Secret, the law of attraction. And my kids were 3 and 5 years old, and they were at the stage where when I would go use the bathroom, they would be in the bathroom with me, everywhere, following me. And so when I got that movie, I decided to take a bath, and I locked the door so that I could watch it in peace. And it became my nurturing time, because it was like when I would go take a bath, I'd be like, okay, I'm going to watch something that's progressive, something that's feeding me something healthy. And I would leave feeling like I just had a nice little retreat. And so that's what I would suggest, taking time, quiet time for yourself, so that you're putting in your mind either meditating, or you're putting in your mind things that are healthy and conducive to a progressive lifestyle.
I think those are some really great tips from both you and Dr. Wilborn. We're going to go back to Dr. Wilborn on this one to help give us a piece of health advice or tips that you found to help motivate others.
So I was reading a story recently that was written by a palliative care nurse who worked in a hospice with dying patients. And this nurse decided that she would interview these patients to learn what were some of their top regrets, right? And more specifically, how can the wisdom, if you will, of the dying inform those of us who maybe have a little bit more life left? And so that work culminated in this book called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. And I don't remember all the 5, right? But I remember the one. The number one regret of patients, these particular patients who were dying, was that they didn't live a life that they chose for themselves, that they lived a life that somebody chose for them. And I think when we think specifically about women and some of the messaging that we get, oftentimes we are not living a life based off of the life that we've chosen for ourselves. Instead, what we often inherit is what I call a life script of the shoulds, right? I should look like this. I should live like this. I should have this job. I should. And I think the danger of living a life of shoulds is that it keeps us from living a life of purpose. It keeps us from living a life of authenticity. It certainly keeps us from being well. And it doesn't allow us to pursue a path of purpose. And so when I work with clients, one of the things that I try to get clients to do is to not only imagine the life that they want to live, but also recognize that they can create it, that they can create and maintain the life that they want to live, one that's free of regrets. So I don't have a tip. Here's what I do have. I actually have a question. Actually, I have 2 questions, and this is true Wilborn form, because I think that oftentimes questions can be just as powerful as the answers. I want each woman that can hear my voice ask themselves this first question. Am I living a life now that I'm going to regret later? I'm going to ask it one more time. Am I living a life now that I'm going to regret later? And here's the second question. If that answer is yes, what is one step that you are willing to take today, not tomorrow, today, to change that?
I am just speechless a little bit. Going over to the next question. This is awesome. awesome pieces that we're getting from you ladies. I don't know about the participants, but I'm just so far blown away myself and happy to be in this room for sure. I'm going to go next to, and please, if you've not already written those questions down, please write them down, think about them, and spend some time with those this evening. So the next question that I have, this one's for Molly and Layla. Why do you think it's so hard for people to stick to their self-care routines? People start off with things like New Year's resolutions, and they want to eat healthy and carve out time for themselves, and then it kind of goes away. So, Molly, you want to pull us through what do you think is so hard for people?
Yes, and I might have to ask you to repeat that question in a second because I want to go to a couple of things that each of my co-panelists said. Dr. Wilburn mentioned the word should, and I always say, well, one of my least favorite words is should. And I try not to use it. I try not to use it as we should eat these things or I should do. I think the word should puts so much pressure on ourselves. It puts so much pressure on others. So that's one thing that I would encourage. And I second that if we can try to pull that from our vocabulary as much as possible. I'll still catch myself sometimes using it, and then I'll kind of rephrase it. The other thing, Layla mentioned something about, and then we feel so stressed out. Another phrase that I have not used for a very long time. I don't know if I could say a decade, but it's been a really long time. And I encourage my team to remove this from our vocabulary as well as I'm so stressed out. Because when we say I'm so stressed out, it's really a catch-all. It doesn't get to what's underneath it. It does nothing productive. And if anything, it heightens that anxiety of whatever we're feeling. So we actually had, we're a team of dietitians. We're all remote, we're around the state. We have a Monday morning huddle call at 9 a.m. Well, this week we had a pre-call that was started at 8 a.m. The entire call was about stress and how are we handling stress and what are we doing about it? Because I know everybody's going through a lot with COVID. We have some of our dietitians that are new moms, soon to be moms. Their husbands have lost jobs. Everyone's got a lot of stuff going on. So let's talk about it. And we really dug into this. And I'll just give a quick example. But one of our dietitians had an event that happened last week, and it was something really small. It wasn't small. She had car trouble that stressed her out. And she realized, why am I so upset about it? She actually told her husband on Friday, I'm more sad than anything, because her grandfather had been the person she always turned to when she had anything that was dealing with the car. He had recently passed away, and it kind of brought up these feelings of loss for him. So all week long, I'm so stressed about my car, which was just kind of a negative, she was able to just really reveal it, that stress was really sadness. So I think if there's something we can do of removing that from our vocabulary as much as possible, I would strongly encourage you to, because it just covers it up and it doesn't get underneath it, and try to see what's happening below that. Stephanie, I wanted to see if you have a breathing tip. And sorry, April, I know you asked me the other question, but as Stephanie was talking, and I mentioned earlier that I get nervous as we're talking about this stuff. So I'm taking these deep breaths, and I'm sure, Stephanie, you have some things, just like one quick tip, that when we're really nervous or we have that anxiety, a breathing tool that can help us to rein that in.
Yes. So one of the main things that I would do when I would start having an anxiety attack is I would ask myself, what's happening in this moment right now? And so I would start feeling my heart beating, and I would feel the rhythm, and if it was beating fast or slow. And when you bring yourself to the present moment, it kind of takes away all the thoughts because you're focusing on this moment. So you can focus on every breath, every inhale. You can start. And let me just give you one quick thing real quick. You can take 1 minute to breathe by inhaling, holding your breath, exhaling, holding your breath 4 times. And that's 1 minute. And by the time you're finished, you will be totally different. One of my clients has been at the doctor's office, and the doctor, her blood pressure was up, and she said, wait, I can fix that. And she watched her breath. She watched her heart rate, not her heart rate, what is it called? Her blood pressure reduced in front of her eyes just by breathing, just by slowing down her breath. That's what I have to offer. Thanks for asking, Molly.
That's what I have to offer. For sure. And I read this book called Thrive. It's a fabulous book. If you haven't read it, it's by Ariana Huffington. It was out a few years ago, but it's something I gift a lot to people. And just as Stephanie was saying, those deep breaths in and out. And then something that I think is cool is adding in a word that is very meaningful to you and powerful to you on the inhale, and something that feels toxic or negative on the exhale. And so, I don't always remember to do it, but in those times, I have, and knowing what those words are ahead of time. So if you're in that kind of panic mode, you can turn to that. And then you're breathing in that positive, exhaling with that negative. So that's why I said, April, I'm going to need you to read the question again.
That's okay. I'm walking away from this living my best life for sure with all of these tips. So I hope all of the women are getting all of this. And I'm already breathing differently because I started off a bit nervous, if you didn't tell, and just breathing. And this is great. So thank you. I will read it again for you, sure. Why do you think it's so hard for people to stick to their self-care routines? They start off with resolutions and then they kind of go away.
I know Layla will have more to contribute, but from a nutritional perspective and a kind of a wellness or fitness perspective, one of the biggest things that I see is people set goals that are so far removed from where they currently are. That pendulum has to swing so far. And we can use the word lofty or unattainable, unrealistic, whatever you want to say. That's one big reason. Another is that they're so vague. When we say, I want to lose weight, I want to have more energy, I want to be happier, I want to sleep better. Well, these are not very specific. How are we going to do these things? Those aren't as much goals as they are wishes. We're trying to wish our way to that, but we're not really setting ourselves up for what are these very specific steps, what are the very specific behavior changes we're going to do that are going to translate into the habits that are going to bring about that change. So I'd say, I think the number one reason that we are not successful when we step out to make a new version of ourselves is that we're not specific enough. We're not, we don't have a plan. A lot of times we set more of a wish or a want than a specific attainable goal. Layla?
Yeah, I completely agree with Molly. First of all, you need to set SMART goals, right? We hear about SMART goals all the time, but there's really something to it. They have to be actionable. They have to be attainable. They have to be doable. They have to be timely. And I agree with what Molly says. The biggest thing is that people set very unrealistic goals, right? So when you're working with someone, there is a stages of change behavioral theory where there are stages of change, right? So when you're setting New Year's resolutions or you're trying to do, all of this stuff all at one time, first doing too much, number one, and number two, not being able to be in a pattern of creating new habits, right? When you're creating new habits, you can't do it all at once, and it does take time. So through the stages of change, a lot of people don't know this, but there's relapse, and that's part of habit changing and part of stages of change. And that doesn't just come with alcohol or drug addiction. Relapse is kind of something that we go through in any pattern of trying to create long-term sustainable goals and habit changes through our behavior. So a lot of times when I work with people, they'll want to go, from 0 to 50. And it's like, hey, you know what? Right now, you're stuck at 2. What is the one thing that can get you to go from 2 to 4, right? And let's make some goals around that. Oh, and by the way, what's going to get in the way of that? What's going to stop you from achieving that goal? Because that's the other thing too. People don't have strategies and tactics around what might get in their way, what might happen. So those are just some of the things. You have to establish SMART goals, but the biggest thing is that they have to be realistic. You have to, like I said earlier, be in a place of compassion for yourself. It's not going to be perfect. And oftentimes when people do not have compassion for themselves, they get frustrated and then they throw their hands up, and that's when they decide that they don't want to do it anymore. And then they tell themselves those bad stories instead of telling themselves good stories, and it causes a whole cascade of not being able to succeed. So smaller goals, realistic goals, and then having self-awareness about what's going to get in the way.
Can I jump in on that? Can I jump in on the end of that?
Yeah,
I know we have I'm watching the time here. I think everything that's been said is I think true and valuable in terms of trying to understand, the part that we're speaking to in terms of why folks don't attain their goals. I think the other thing that I would just sort of latch on to, and I said this earlier, is I think also being clear about why it is that you are doing what you're doing, why it is that you have established this particular goal, and it being about you personally and not what everybody else is doing. Because when you think about like New Year's resolutions, and again, this idea of like movements and what everybody else is doing, it's not really lifestyle oriented, right? It's more about the thing that's kind of happening in the moment. And so when the thing that's happening in the moment has passed, as movements and other things often kind of do, the incentive to keep going is lost, because they were never really clear about from the start the why for why they're doing what they're doing in the first place. So I would say the piece that, again, that I would add is make sure you have a mindset that creates a foundation for you to attain the goals that you are, striving for. Otherwise, you'll lose the motivation and the incentive, and then you'll be on to the next thing. So I just wanted to throw that in.
That's a great ad, Dr. Wilborn. Molly, if someone felt a little bit energized about maybe getting back in the gym after some of this conversation, you want to tell us a little bit about that Ochsner Guest Pass?
Yeah, thanks for the reminder. Okay, y'all, I mentioned Ochsner was Element Fitness Center for years. If you've been there before and you're like, I've been there, I know it. We just went through a huge, like multi-million-dollar renovation. It's a completely new place. So if you've been there before, right now, I could take you there and I could drop you in the middle, like take the blindfold off your eyes. You would have no idea where you were. Like doors are different locations, walls are out. It's just gorgeous. We have a Zen lab there. We have a ride lab for cycling classes. We have just like all kinds of really cool stuff. So I have for anybody who is tuned in, I have guest passes for you at the front desk if you do want to go. It's a full day guest pass, and you can just walk in and say, hey, Molly told me to, my name's Molly Kimball, but they're under my name. And so you can just go there, get your guest pass. You can just do a workout. You could just walk through it. You don't even have to work out, spend the day there. If you want to go out to the pool, whatever you want to do. And then we have our cafe there. It's called Fuel Cafe. And I mentioned our Eat Fit partnership with all of our restaurants, but Fuel Cafe actually just started a Eat Fit Grab and Go, GEAUX, but like basically a meal prep. And gosh, we're like, it's things that you don't even think would be healthy, but they've made them nutritious for you. So that's all in there. But stop in there, see it, and it's a beautiful space. But I would say the how do you get started if you're kind of trying to get motivated and you're like, okay, if you want to get to a gym, I'd love for y'all to come see our new renovations. Even if you say, I live too far away, I'm not going to use that on a regular basis, I still want you to come see it. But how do you get started? It's setting those small steps. It's not being stopped or halted by that paralysis of perfection. If I can't do it all the way, why bother getting started? So being okay with progress instead of perfection. And so what can I, as our panelists have said, what can I start doing now that's going to get me an impact? What's also getting in the way of what am I not doing that I can be doing to improve my wellness? And I would say pick one thing, pick two things. If alcohol is just a really big vice for you and it's derailing you food-wise, calorie-wise, everything, sleep-wise, okay, well, that alcohol might be a first place to start. If sugared beverages are, if late night mindless eating is, what is this one thing? Seek out guidance when you need it. Seek out the professional. Look for, whether it's a mental health expert, a registered dietitian, what is it that you need that's going to help you in this? So seek someone professionally when you need it. I'm also a big fan of habit stacking. And what I mean by that is if there's something new that you want to start, what's something else that you're already doing that you can pair with it? We do walk and talk meetings all the time. I have a walk and talk meeting with our VP Friday at 7. He's going to be driving from the North Shore. I was like, well, great. I'll be walking. I don't need to sit at my computer at 7 o'clock just to sit there and talk to him. I know him well enough. I'm going to put my earbuds in and he knows I'll be walking. And so tagging up these things that when we're pressed for time, what can we basically double up on that's not going to sacrifice the quality of either?
That's great, and it kind of went into what the next question up was. What are some practical tactics to help maintain consistency and to stay on track? So, Stephanie, do you have anything to add to that one?
Sorry about that. I love what Molly said about the walk and talk. That's where I've gotten my girlfriend time in, as well as working out. So it's like an excuse to get out there, but you're also getting your socialization in. But I would say put something on a schedule. Give yourself just one small thing that's going to add to your goal. Put it on a schedule and just make it a part of your routine every day. I would do 1 minute of meditation and then add to that. And so that's my idea of just kind of doing it slowly but gradually and consistently.
This is all great, and I just can't believe that I'm at my last question and trying to get a little bit of time for some of the women in the audience to ask a question. I'm going to give this one to Dr. Wilborn. How can the Junior League and those ladies joining us today support more women to prioritize taking care of our whole self?
I think it's a great question. And I think, you know, the fact that we have a women's leadership summit that recognizes the need to have wellness on the agenda is certainly representative of that, right? And so one of the things that I was, you know, as I was sort of just researching and kind of refreshing my memory and what I knew about the Junior League, and the thing that I was impressed with is that not only is the Junior League incorporating this into their events, but you know, they're also incorporating it into I would say sort of their philosophy and their focus, right? And so, you know, one of the mission and the focus areas is actually advancing the well-being of women. And I think, you know, for there to be a practice, there has to be a principle or philosophy that, again, sort of creates the foundation for promoting a culture that integrates wellness into your programming, into everything that it is that you're doing as an organization. And so I would say that Junior League is actually a good model for establishing a philosophy or focus, if you will, around advancing the well-being of women. And I think also establishing practices like integrating wellness as part of events and such as I think a model for how other organizations can approach this. It's got to be part of your philosophy for it to be part of your practice. And I think Junior League is a great model for that.
And just a little
Thank you
note on
for
that
that.
too, April, if you don't
Yeah,
mind.
Layla.
That's so Like-Minded Ladies was, you know, created because we felt that there was sort of it was missing with professional organizations, and Junior League is very holistic and does some incredible programs throughout the community and is multifaceted. But we created Like-Minded Ladies specifically because of what Dr. Wilborn was saying, is that most of the women's strictly professional organizations were not attentive to the well-being. So you cannot have professional success if you do not have personal support. So I just wanted to throw that in, that is, you know, Like-Minded Ladies is personal and professional support of women because they are so incredibly integrated. So I agree, 150%.
That's perfect, because I was coming right to you next with asking you to end us with that question. It's time for Q&A. We have about 11 minutes for Q&A. Is there any, do we have any questions in the chat room for these ladies?
Yes. First, I want to say, ladies, we are getting so many comments from the attendees. Your messages are really resonating with everyone. And we do have some questions as well. This one is directed specifically to Molly as far as diet goes. We'd love to know maybe your take on, number one, the keto diet, number two, the carnivore diet, and also long-term. And also as a follow-up, if your opinion of those diets would be different for someone who is insulin resistant or pre-diabetic.
Yeah, so I'll answer it specifically on the keto diet because that's really where there's been the most research versus the carnivore diet, but you can kind of extrapolate it to that. So the keto diet, the true ketogenic diet, as it was developed like originally, it was developed for children with seizures, with epilepsy, who did not respond to medication. And the true ketogenic diet is extremely, extremely low carbohydrate. It's also extremely low protein, because protein is basically converted into glucose in our bodies to a small degree. So when we say extremely low, the diet is centered on things like heavy whipping cream, butter, even things like avocado or nuts, macadamia nuts may have too much carbohydrate to fit into that traditional ketogenic diet. So when someone now says, I'm doing keto, what they're really usually doing is low carb. So on a menu, if you see a salmon dish with broccoli and asparagus, and they're calling it their keto meal, or some sort of a steak with the side of vegetables, and this is their keto menu, that's low carb, but it's not traditional ketogenic. So, I like to start with that, because most people are not doing a traditional ketogenic diet. Those who are really restricting their carbohydrates and still going moderate to low protein, and they're testing their urine or they're testing their breath and they are in ketosis, okay, like we are starting to get more into that ketogenic diet. What I will say is this: for someone who has large amount of weight to lose, someone who is in the 300, 400 pound, and their weight is, we need them to lose weight of all types, fluid, fat weight. We just need those pounds to come down. The ketogenic diet can be a really nice jump start. Most of the time when we've done body composition analysis on people before and after following it very diligently, yes, they may lose weight. Yes, they may lose body fat, but they're also often losing muscle mass. And the reason that's not good is because when you're losing muscle mass, you're also slowing that metabolic rate. You're slowing how many calories your body burns. On the flip side, a lot of times when someone is doing the ketogenic diet, I'll try to be brief with this, but it is, they're centering it on the proteins, or they're centering on the fats especially. And it breaks my heart when I hear someone that is doing keto and they're limiting their asparagus, they're limiting their spinach because of the carbohydrate count, their broccoli. I'm like, nobody got in a situation of obesity, of excess weight of any type because of too many stalks of asparagus, let's be honest. So I think it gets people really skewed, and sometimes, or raspberries. I can't eat those raspberries because of the carbs in them. So what I do like on the flip side, if someone says, well, but I still want to go moderate carb, I want to do something like this, I really like a keto style diet that is more of a plant-based keto style. So the fats coming from things like nuts, avocado, olive oil, nut butters, keeping it more plant-based. Yeah, maybe some animal fats in there, but we can really keep it more plant-based, not being so restrictive on vegetables, and allowing things in like those berries that are so fiber rich, antioxidant rich, but might have a little bit more carb than what someone's doing on a stricter version of a keto diet. So I would say a keto-like diet that is heavier plant-based, not fearful of the vegetables or fruits, especially like if someone's watching it, going more on the berries, because again, they are higher fiber, lower sugar than other fruits. So that's kind of my take on it. What I'll sum it all up with, though, is if someone is finding success with any type of a plan, then we want to support it. If we find that maybe it's a little bit not going to be nutritious in the long run, but we still want to support it, but maybe we can find ways that we can really modify it. And that's where earlier I said finding a professional, a health professional, a credentialed professional, not someone who's had their personal experience and you're following them on Instagram and what worked for them, they want to share with you. We want someone who is, in this case, if it's nutrition, you need to be a licensed registered dietitian in the state of Louisiana to give you nutrition advice, period. And so whether it's our dietitians at the fitness center or a registered dietitian elsewhere, seek that really, that expert who can help you kind of with the nuances and navigating where you are and maybe where's a better balance for you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that answer. We have time for one more question, and this is going to be to everyone. There's so much talk now about going back to normal, but with situations like 9/11, for instance, things that we thought were temporary became our new way of life. Could each of you maybe think about some possible changes that you think would actually be carried over long term? That maybe some positive changes, hopefully, that may outlast this pandemic. And we'll go just round robin if anybody would like to start. Yes, go ahead, Stephanie.
I like the masks, even though they're not super comfortable for me, just knowing that you can get COVID by communicating with someone in their face, it just shows how much any other illness you can attract from someone else. And so I think that that's probably safer. I would rather, I can't imagine us not wearing masks and being in like the Superdome and everyone, not having masks on, because now it's like, you can get anything. That's what I think.
I have been saying for a long time, well, we're finally catching up to other countries where it's completely normal for them to wear masks. I personally don't know if wearing masks will be a forever thing. It certainly might. But I think one of the things that we will have to get used to is certainly having hybrid type working. I mean, obviously, we just had our first in-person event last month. Earlier this month. Our next event will be another in-person event, and some people don't feel comfortable yet to go in person, and that's absolutely fine. So I think that we have to get used to hybrid events, and we also have to get used to, and we should all be this anyway, but being non-judgmental about the choices that people are making for themselves as well when it comes to living this way, right? Because we don't know what's going to happen yet.
I sort of forgot specifically what the question was, so I'll just answer it the way I thought I heard it. I think that one thing true, again, Wilborn fashion, I would ask a question, what do you want to leave back then? And what do you want to take with you into the space that you are in now and where you're headed? And then the other thing I would say is, I think part of what I think people will be taking with them from this pandemic is a focus on well-being. I think I have seen more people starting therapy for the first time, or starting it again, or focusing on their nutrition, or focusing on their diet. And so my hope is that that will continue, that folks will take with them wellness on their journey to whatever this new normal is.
I agree. I've seen more people out in the neighborhood, even during the hot months of the summer, moving, and families moving, couples moving. I saw two guys with their babies with the strollers, and I thought usually you would see two women with their babies in the strollers, and these two guys, I mean, they were doing their own walk and talk. And so the movement that we've seen people do and incorporate that physical activity, and I think more of us are cooking at home. We're taking a little bit more time with that food preparation. And of course, we definitely want to support our local restaurants. We know they're hurting, but there's not the convenience, the drive-through. A lot of people have ditched that in favor of, let me just do my own. I've got a little bit more time. Let me prepare my meals. Oh, speaking of, can I say this? We all have speaking of preparing meals, we all have a cookbook card. I'll show you all this really quickly. It's our Eat Fit cookbook. You'll have a promo code in your Junior League swag bag that is 20% of proceeds goes to Junior League. And so, but I did want to say that the promo code, I don't think that we said it ends Halloween, October 31. So we don't have that expiration on y'all's card, but it does end October 31. But the meal planning, the meal preparation, more time spent on how we nourish our bodies is something that I've seen as a benefit, and I hope we continue to take that with us after.
Well, this has all been spectacular, and it's been such an honor to be your moderator this afternoon. We've come to the end of our session, ladies. Thank you all of our panelists. You're so outstanding and amazing, and like I said, such an honor to be here with you. And I look forward to connecting with all of you in so many different ways. I'm just excited about the connection. You gave us so many insights and valuable tips to walk away from with, to really begin to live our best lives if we've not already started, and to start self-care or rethink about it or know some steps to get us there. So thank you, each of you, for being so great to yourselves and to your community and to Junior League today. We'll now take a quick 10-minute break before our closing remarks and raffle. There's a raffle giveaway by JLNO President-elect Shannon Bryce. She's going to be hosting that in a little bit. So use the Zoom link provided in your program to join us promptly at 3:30. For those remarks, after those, we're going to have an entrepreneurial panel and our We Fellowship Big Pitch event. During the break, follow us on Facebook. There's a Facebook group to network with fellow attendees and to join some of the fun activities that we have going on. Again, thank you all. It's been such an amazing hour, and I look forward to the rest of this great event.
Thank you so much for having us.